Imagine this. It's the late 1960s and computers are massive clunky machines. Data is stored on punch cards, magnetic tapes, and primitive databases. The world is slowly transitioning from paper-based records to digital formats. But there's a problem. How do we move data from different systems when everyone is using their own proprietary formats? That's where the CSV comes. Now imagine you have the data in this text form. Then you reduce it to this form where you have only the names and the salaries. Then you convert it into a table. The same table in a CSV format would look like this. To understand this, first need to understand some of the separators in this. That is a comma. A comma is used in this table to differentiate the two columns, that is CO and the salary he gets. But how do you differentiate two records? So that's where the new line character comes. This new line character is used to differentiate the two records. Imagine you need the comma in one of your records. What will you do? So that's where the double quote comes. You use the double quotes around the record where you want a comma. But imagine you want these double quotes in your record too. Then what do? You just wrap it twice around the word where you want that, like the syntax in the image. And what about an empty field or an empty column? You just give nothing there between the commas or give double quotes. Now let's start exploring how to create a CSV. I'll create a salary.txt file and paste the contents. But still this is not a CSV. So I go to the file and rename it to the CSV. And you can see this magically converts into a Excel-like format. This is the power of CSV, where you can convert normal text files into a Excel-like spreadsheet. Now let's try to create a IPYNB file and try to explore Python with this CSV. Now I want to create a CSV reader and writer from the scratch. So we will do this in Python, but you can do this in any language with the similar logic. So for that, I have to import OS to read and write. So I'm doing that. Next, this code and print the data for you. I made a mistake. It should be salary. Yeah, this is our text. So now we will split the data into the records. As I said, it is the separator is \n. So I will do a data dot split \n. This will give us the data in records. The records are, the rows are divided by a comma in a list in an array. That's what we want. Now let's try to get the columns from this data. The data is divided into rows, but I want it in columns also. So for that, I will write data with records in columns. But this is a very complicated syntax. We'll make it simpler with a for loop. So I'm taking each record in data, then split it by a comma. So let's take an array to store all that data with records and columns. Then we'll append each record but separated by a comma, that is split by a comma. So this split by comma does split the rows into columns, and we'll try to print it. So print it. Yes, as you can see, this is array of an array. for list of a list, where each list represents a row, and in each row we have two datas. Now let's write this into a class which we can use to read, write, and do some methods on the data. So I will do that, formalize it into a class CSV. I don't want the reader, I want just the CSV. And let's take an init function. You don't need to understand all the class syntax here. Just remember it's an abstraction. So the file name, then we'll try to write one read function. And you can pause it here and see this is the same code as previous. Now I will take one more data self.data variable where I will store the data. So self.data is equal to read. So whenever this class is initiated, the read function will automatically read all the columns and records and give it to the self.data. Now the next thing is there might be an header. The header is like the column names in the first row. So for that we need to ask the user if the headers are present. For that I will take a variable, then pass it here. Then we need to change the read function. We need to give the first row as a header. So for that I will take a if loop. If the header is present, self.header will be the first row. But the self.header is a boolean here, so I will change that. I will take a header, then pass it when someone calls this function. So in our data we'll have two things, self.data and self.column names. So this header represents the column names. In our case it was position and salary. So self.common name. Next we'll write a function to get the column names. So we have already got that from the read function, we just need to return it. So let get columns names. So return self.column name. So let's try it once. Let's write one more function, that is get data, that will columns and self. So here our data is stored in row form, but I want it in column form. So we have to take a column name from user, which columns data he wants. Then first we will check if the column name is valid, that is the column name is present in the self.column names. Then I will try to calculate the index, that is if it's position it is 0th index, and if it's salary it's first index. And for each record in the data I will take that index's value. So for each record take the position or the salary. Now we'll try it. So I am reading the file using the class, then salary dot get columns. To get the columns, that is our position and salary. Keep in mind that I have given header is equal to true. Now I can do get data columns of salary, and we get that. Next I want to do cast columns. Now the data stored for the salary is in strings. I want to convert it into int. It will be a similar function where I take the cast type. So as you can see, I will do cast and pass the int. You can pause the video and see the code for that, and we'll run the function. And as you can see, we have converted into int from string. You can pause here and understand the function, but that is not really important. I want to show you how you can write these functions to do some tasks in the CSV. So here it's just some cast typing in Python. So these Python people will understand more. So now let's rewrite the data into self.data. So if save is given, that means the casting will be saved into the self.data. So I will do self. I will take uh, self.data row because I want to do it with a for loop to keep the simple. Now for let's take that. So here I'm enumerating and saving the data. You don't need to understand this syntax. It is simple for loop. You change each column, then you just save it into self.data. This you can write in any logic like you want, and then we will try it. We have casted it. Let's save it also. I made a mistake. Recorded column. So let's try to rectify it. Let's take column index, not column name. And column index is this one. So which column we are trying to cast? So that might be salary. Then the index will be 1. And let's make sure that each record has that index at least, because some records might have empty fields, so we don't need to cast. And we'll run that, and we got that. So when we do get data columns, we still have that because we had saved it. So let's just remove this. That is, let's say we want to save the CSV or write it into one file. That will be our final function. So what I am doing is make iterating over the records in the self.data and just writing it to the files. So for that I join with the comma and then backslash n. So as I see, I have saved it, and you can see it's created a CSV file. So that was the video. You can see the functions properly and understand and write it in your own language and implement. Thank you for seeing my video. See you in the next one.